Welcome to Dweller of the Dark.
We are a channel honoring the yellowed and blackened bones of many prominent authors. We will be digging up several obscure, strange, and forgotten authors who influenced many of the great horror, science fiction, and fantasy writers today. More tales of the horrifying, obscure, strange, and forgotten are climbing out of the tombs. Subscribe, comment, like, donate, or I'll send the devil of black by you to rip your head off as we did the like button. Unknown horror masters, send us ghoulish delights for the Skull and Bones collection. Your pound of writer's flesh will feed our ghouls for now. Books, albums, websites, in the links below. Children of Horror, Legion of Ghouls. The season of Halloween has arrived. Each night, we will present a tale, song, or poem in the ghoulish spirit of the season. The Man in the Dark by Irwin Ross. His arms were leadened, as though he had carried a great weight in them for many long hours. Slowly he brought them upward until his hands were immediately before his face. But, as if he knew what they must look like, he stood there with an expression of fear on his face and with his eyes closed as if in sleep. So he waited alone on a deserted street, his hands held up stiffly and his eyes so tightly closed as to form unusual wrinkles at their corners. Unfortunately, some blind fate had made him stop just within the feeble radiation of a street light. Unfortunately for him, at any rate, for it was the one point in the city block where he could be seen. And thus it happened that a passing patrol car screeched to a stop and two uniformed men spilled out of its doors and walked over to the lonely figure. He let his arms fall tiredly to his sides as the two policemen hustled him into their vehicle, but he still did not open his eyes, nor, for that matter, did he speak. Because of this passiveness, the two patrolmen at first assumed he was just another drunk, the quiet kind, but then they happened to notice his hands and the bulging pockets of his coat, and they changed their minds quickly enough. He might be a drunk, but judging from his hands, he had obviously been much more than that during the evening. After several blustering and futile attempts to make the prisoner talk, they gave up, and during the rest of the drive to the police station, they were grim, watchful-faced, their right hands resting on their pistol holsters. There was no way of knowing what violence someone like this might attempt, so they both were thinking. At first, the prisoner maintained his mask of indifference. He just sat with his eyes closed and supported the heavy weight of his arms. Suddenly, he began to shudder, and then the shudders became more pronounced and violent, wave on wave. The policemen at first were uneasy, and both of them involuntarily drew back and exchanged a bewildered glance. They'd certainly never run into a character like this before. The driver brought his foot down hard on the accelerator. He wanted to get to the station as quickly as possible in order to let someone with more authority take over. Then they were there. Quickly, contemptuously, they shoved him out of the patrol car and, grasping his shoulders, they led him into the chalky light of the station house. His eyes were still closed, and his pale face was immobile. His heavy arms hung limp at his sides. His fists were clenched. The sergeant at the desk looked up from his paperwork. When he saw the prisoner, he pushed his swivel chair back. His nostrils wrinkled with disgust, and his eyes sought the young patrolman. "Well?" The prisoner just stood there between his guards without replying, his eyes stubbornly closed. although he turned his head with a spasmodic jerk toward the desk sergeant. The sergeant said,
"Wow."
Again, just as the driver of the patrol car started to speak. They both stopped in confusion. The patrolman spoke. "Picked him up down by the stockyards. He's the one, all right. There's no doubt about that." "Yeah," the other patrolman added, "and he isn't talking." He turned to the prisoner. "What's the idea, Mac? Are you playing it cagey? Waiting to see your lawyer?" "Look at him," the first uniformed man said. "That's all you gotta do. And you'll know, too, that he's the one." As he spoke, he roughly shoved the prisoner against the desk. The resultant jar must have been unexpected, for one of the man's hands relaxed slightly as he made a clutching gesture at the desk, and before his fingers closed again, a large, bloody eyeball fell to the floor. He remained stolid and made no attempt to retrieve it, nor did any of the police. It just lay there, so fresh and moist that it seemed alive, looking sullenly out over the oiled wooden floor. The younger of the two patrolmen gagged and took out his handkerchief to wipe the cold sweat that appeared in drops on his forehead.
"Dirty scum of an animal torturer."
The sergeant leaned forward over his desk and spoke intently, his eyes shifting away from the man's hands and the object on the floor to the patrolman. Still, the prisoner did not speak, and his shoulders drooped slightly. His arms were so tired.
"Night after night,"
the sergeant continued.
"You scum, you've been busting into the stockyards and mutilating the poor defenseless beast. What kind of a lowlife are you? What's the idea? Arrgh!"
The prisoner just stood there confronting the sergeant with closed eyes, but now his face relaxed from the set look and his lips were quivering.
"Why, man, why? Talk. Why rip out their eyes? Poor, tortured beast. Why their eyes?"
He still refused to speak, so after a bit, the sergeant picked up the phone on his desk and called into headquarters.
"Finally got him, Chief. Yep. Meek as a mouse, except he ain't very conversational. No trouble at all. Just wish he did want some. It would be a pleasure for me and the boys. Yeah, we got him red-handed, and I do mean red-handed. Yeah, a cow's eyeball in each hand, and a coat pocket full of them. Okay, sure, okay. Yes, I'll be sure to do that."
He hung up.
"The chief will be over here in half an hour, and he'll want to see the evidence. Well, shove this thing in a cell and leave him just like he is. Hear me? Just like he is."
Now the two young cops felt more comfortable. They were on surer ground. Roughly, they grabbed the prisoner and swung him around and started gandy dancing him from the room. But just as they reached the door, he suddenly wrenched free of their grasp with great unsuspected strength, and in a single movement, he whirled and faced the sergeant. Before the cops had time to grab him again, he spoke for the first time. "But you don't understand. Someday, I would have found a pair that would fit." The room was suddenly quiet, and for a long minute, none of the three policemen moved. The man had finally opened his eyelids, and now he slowly turned his head from side to side, trying, as it would seem, to see with nothing but eyeless sockets that were packed with dirty cotton wool.
Thank you for listening. Have a great night.